Pivotal moment. I see several priorities for the global agenda.
Give your head a shake. This is not a game.
As a reminder, my notion and my book of the fourth industrial revolution is that the innovations we are seeing today in terms of artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, cloud computing, advanced robotics, and many others, together constitute a new phase in human life. Today, that is a reality. The fourth industrial revolution has become a reality, not just for the pioneers, but for a broad range of people and workers.
And that is why I've made it clear that my ministers in my government will be banned from participating in the World Economic Forum when I'm in government. Work for Canada. Work for Canada. If you want to go to Davos to the conference, make it a one-way ticket. But you can't be part of our government and working for a policy agenda that is against the interests of our people.
And I see the need for action. I see the need for a great reset. We can, and the World Economic Forum is very open and as an open platform to integrate everybody who is willing to address those issues in a spirit, which means to exercise here true global citizenship. Certainly the health industry, the digital industry will go out of this crisis strengthened, but we know that many industries which rely particularly on physical interaction will have difficulties to survive.
The honking will continue until freedom improves.
And the thing I've made this point several times, and I'll make it again here. There's a misconception by conservatives that, in America especially, there's different groups that the progressives latch onto to further their agenda. It's Muslim immigrants, it's transgender bathrooms, 1 month, or whatever, so on and so forth. And the point I always beat into their heads is they don't really care about these groups. This is just whoever is a useful tool at the moment. And as soon as that group is defiant in any way, they're thrown into the rubbish bin, as you say.
We're not evil. Just because we don't want you to assume omnipotence and omnipresence. There is simply no pathway forward to the green and equitable utopia that necessitates the further impoverishment of the already poor, or the sacrifice of economic security and opportunity on the food, energy, and housing front. There is simply no pathway forward to the global utopia you hypothetically value that is dependent on force. What gives you the right to enforce your demands on other sovereign citizens equal in value to you? A better way forward would be to prioritize the problems that beset all of us on this still green, functional, and increasingly abundant planet. With the requisite focus and attention demanded of a true political class elected by the people, capable of and willing to look at everything, trying to fix where necessary, trying to maintain as much freedom and autonomy as possible, and stop simply capitalizing narcissistically on the mere appearance of action, knowledge, and virtue. We should obtain true cooperative consent from those affected, farmers, truckers, working class people, and work with them rather than forbidding them with your power or improving them so they will be finally worthy of your time and attention. Help replace dirty energy with clean if you must, but do it on your own dime. And make sure that the results are cheap and plentiful if you want to help the poor and the planet. The warning bells are ringing. Listen to them before they turn into sirens. We will not advance without resistance through the straits of your enforced privation. We will not allow you to steal and destroy the energy that makes our lives bearable and that produces our food and shelter and housing and the sporadic delights of modern life, just to address your existential terror, particularly when it will fail to do so in any case. We will not allow our children to be criticized first for having the temerity to merely exist, and then deprived of the prosperous and opportunity-rich future we strived so hard to prepare for them. We remain unconvinced that your frightened and self-congratulatory moralizing and intellectual pretension, ignorance of the limits of statistics, and misuse of arithmetic, that your declared emergency and the panic you sow because of it means that you should now be ceded all necessary authority. So, Leave us alone. You Machiavellian pretenders and virtue signalers, objecting to power, all the while you gathered around you madly. You sacrificers of the wealth and property of others. You would-be planetary saviors, leave us alone, to prosper or not, as a result of our own choices, as a result of our own actions. Leave us alone, or reap the whirlwind.
Listen to the bell toll, globalists. It tolls for thee.
All right, welcome back to the Unacceptables Live. We are back for our final episode and wrap up of the WEF, pardon me, summit in Davos. And here with me, as usual, is Jay Shaw. How are you doing tonight, Jay?
I'm smashing. I'm just, everything's going, I'm on all 6 cylinders, flying.
Awesome. Good stuff. It's been an interesting week in Davos. There's been some cool clips that have popped up on YouTube from the various independent media outlets, as well as some really cool takes in some of the mainstream media like Fox News on some of the goings on there, some of the speeches, some of the statements made, and some of the activities. And Jay, do you want to touch a little bit on what we heard about John Kerry?
Yeah, John Kerry. Now, I was not able to find a lot of information about this, but I'm absolutely certain it's something that John Kerry would say. But at this point, it's still a little bit conjecture. There's an independent journalist who's claimed that John Kerry made a certain statement that where they were privy to what was otherwise a closed discussion, in which John Kerry basically said to a bunch of his psychotic WEF friends that most people just shouldn't even be allowed to have cars. And I think this, it seems to me like that would tie right into this 15-minute city. His concept is like, even people who don't live in the city, we should expand public transit, and most people should just be, and everybody in cities, with the exception of people who are actually literally doing work with their vehicles. So that he's proposing the end of recreational vehicle driving, the end of just driving to the grocery store to get some stuff, driving out to the movie theater at night, etc., etc. He's proposing the end to that, is what he's suggesting that that's the way it should be. And so it's pretty sick, if you ask me, if that's true. And like I say, I wouldn't put it past.
Yeah, it sounds suspiciously like me, or it just sounds suspiciously like, to me at least, it sounds suspiciously like they're trying to box us all into one area to kind of keep us all in one place where they can control us. And that certainly seems to line up with what the current, on paper, WEF agenda is. In their book, The Great Reset, they've made it very clear that they want everybody to be in urban centers that they can control and provide things to you. And that way they don't have to worry about climate change and these different climate agendas, because if you don't have to go too far to get your food and you only eat the food they prescribe to you and you don't own anything, you'll be happy.
Yeah.
What do we know?
Own nothing and be happy. Yeah.
Yeah. What do we know about this John Kerry guy? I know he's a former U.S. politician. Do you know much about him, Jay? I don't really know much.
They know a bit. He's a former senator in the U.S. Very, very, very much in the Al Gore camp. He did attempt make some presidential bids. He tried to run for president. He never got party leadership, so he was always out before it came to the actual election. So he's a sort of popular Democrat, but he's way like back then. He didn't succeed because the left wasn't quite as neoliberal as they are now. They were a little bit closer to the center. If he was doing what he had been doing back then, right now, he would probably do a lot better, as would Al Gore, because they laid the groundwork for this whole keep everybody paralyzed in fear and self-loathing about what's going on with the planet, so that they'll invite the concept of being penned and controlled and killed, etc., etc. It all stems from they create self-loathing.
Right. I mean, for me, this guy John Kerry is He's a little bit of a psychopath. He's an
Yeah,
elitist
yeah.
that is definitely a hypocrite because he flies to all these events in one of these private jets. All like I mean, multiple events per month in these private jets, and then tells you that you shouldn't eat so many hamburgers, or you can only have one hamburger a week, and you shouldn't cook it on a gas stove. I want to roll Jay the clip of what this fucking psycho was saying at the WF. It's just a 30-second clip, just to give you the idea. For those of you following along at home here, just to give you an idea of what this guy thinks of himself and what these people think of themselves and their profound effect, and I'm using that terminology very loosely, their profound effect on the planet. So here's about a 30-second clip with John Kerry speaking. You'll know what I mean when you see this. Here we go.
And when you stop and think about it, it's pretty extraordinary that we, select group of human beings, because of whatever touched us at some point in our lives, are able to sit in a room and come together and actually talk about saving the planet. I mean, it's so almost extraterrestrial to think about, quote, saving the planet. And if you said that to most people, they think you're just a crazy tree-hugging, lefty, liberal, do-gooder, whatever, and there's no relationship. But really, that's where we are.
So that is what these people think of themselves as. They think of themselves as the savior of our planet, and that the rest of us peasants don't have any capability or any power or any will to try and save the planet, and we couldn't ever possibly come up with solutions to do so. So they have to do it for us because we're inept morons. That's the take I get, or that's rather the take I'm going to put forward on that. Just the like absolute lunacy. Who the fuck does this guy think he is saving the planet? He could never do anything to reverse the way the climate's going, nor can any of us, because it's got nothing to do with us. And that's a whole other matter. But it's just some of the shit these guys talk about just drives me up the wall, because they honestly, I think they honestly believe that they're going to save the planet, and they're the only ones that can do it, and that they're superheroes.
Yeah, and I to just step into Carl Jung a little bit, and this doesn't just go for John Kerry. This is the entire WEF, the WHO, the UN, all of these groups that are trying to consolidate power outside of national boundaries and using corporations. You can look to history, and we look at the archetype of the dragons, George and the dragon, the dragon on the flag of England. That's the flag of St. George, right? So, and the story there is these really panicky individuals in a village are essentially they come across a dragon, and they go back to the village, and they go, oh, the world's gonna end, the dragon's gonna burn down everything, it's been prophesied, etc., etc. And St. George says to them, and these people are saying, we have to pack up the town, we have to flee, we have to go here, we have to do this. And he says to them, wait. And he says to the townspeople, we shouldn't listen to the people who are coming along in a complete and utter panic, screaming about how there's a dragon, and screaming about how we have to do this and that, and demanding that you do what they say in order to avoid the catastrophe of the dragon. And St. George goes out and takes it upon himself to find a better solution, which is one person possibly sacrificing themselves so that the whole bloody place doesn't perish. But he takes it on himself. He doesn't ask that other people do it. He goes out there and he does it himself. And that is the spirit of ingenuity. It's not when you go and you ask everybody to change their way of life. You create or invent something. And the free market will fix any ills that the planet has. Human beings will always find out how to do more with less, because that's profitable. The free market teaches us that's profitable. Instead of telling people you may not use natural gas, start investing in people and rewarding people for an innovation that gets us past that. Because right now, if we stop pumping gas out of the ground, we have to then buy it from halfway across the globe, from the Middle East. If other third world countries stop using natural gas, they go back to cooking with coal, and their quality of life deteriorates. And we don't do anything about climate change. So you shouldn't listen to these people who are just going around screaming everything's like Al Gore is telling us in 2009 that there would be no ice left in the Arctic in 2013. He got $130 million in a research grant, and that's what they came up with. And obviously there's still ice there. So the amount that was completely bullshit, wrong, and a waste of money is still actually reverberating into the future.
And that kind of shit, Jay, is still going on. We're looking at Congress just approved, I think it was $396 billion for climate change initiatives. And they had no idea where that money went or if any of the projects were actually profitable, healthy for the planet projects. Like they just didn't even track it. So I think it's
the opposition party here in Canada has been asking the Liberals to, what have you done? What have you been doing with all this carbon tax money? You've been collecting a lot. I don't see any work being done with it.
Yeah, and I was going to lead into Chrystia Freeland being questioned in the House of Commons. Where's the $2 billion that you wanted for this particular company that had something like 4 employees? And no actual office or anything like that. So it was just basically money being shifted somewhere else so they can do away with it, launder it, and put it in their own private bank accounts and pay for their lavish trips to Davos, Switzerland.
That's not the same Chrystia Freeland who just spoke on the panel at the WEF on security and safety globally, is it?
It is one and the same. It's also the same Chrystia Freeland.
Bitch, eh? Wow.
Yeah, it's the same Chrystia Freeland who sent a list of 200 trucking companies to various outfits and said, don't use these companies, basically blacklist them because they may or may not have been involved in the protest in Ottawa back in 2022, 2021, 2022. So, or rather, I guess that would have been 2022. My mistake. It's typical. I think it's par for the course with these politicians that are, taking it upon themselves to silence their political opposition, to debank people that have a political opinion that is different from theirs. Those of you that are fans of the Diagolon, and Raging Dissident will know that Jeremy McKenzie was debanked by Scotiabank for no apparent reason, nobody to hold accountable, and no reason, just debanked. And quite likely, if I was a betting man, I would say it has a lot to do with his political opinion and the limelight that was being shed on him by the House of Commons, declaring a state of emergency, basically directly as a result of a meme he made up. And he's been outspoken, and that's the danger now in a situation like this where you have the politicians that are the young global leaders that are this part of this group of elitists that think that they know what's best for us. The problem with that is that now they silence us and they can do what they want, and they'll make that legislation. They'll legislate being able to, take away your money if you say something they don't like online. And that's not free speech. And that's what these people want. So it's not about bettering the planet. It's not about making things more sustainable. It's not about living longer or having the planet survive longer. It's not about for the good of humanity. It's about what's good for them.
Exactly. And I mean, the people who are smart, and this is the great thing that's going on now, is that there's a lot of people paying attention, and a lot of people know the score as far as and Jeremy McKenzie's a good example. They tried, they locked him up, they went through everything he owned, they put his life under a microscope, they held him without trial, without bail, without yada yada yada, and eventually he just got let out. Well, there's a certain amount of insult that went on there, but who actually wins that one? Because now he gets to be out free, and he gets to talk about how badly they fucked up. And the next time they want to lock him up, it's going to be a lot harder, right? And luckily enough, there's enough of us that are keeping the score and seeing those little wins. I mean, when we have companies like Daily Wire offering $50 million contracts to Stephen Crowder, who's an independent journalist who worked really, really hard in the midterms and did really well. That's a big sign when you have these tight conservative organizations. I mean, we all know what Truth Social paid Trump too, and etc. Jordan Peterson's contract with Daily Wire's, I think, $200 million, and Joe Rogan's
$100 million.
Oh, it's 100. Okay.
100 million.
And Joe Rogan's
Jump change.
Joe Rogan's up at Joe Rogan's up at 200 million now.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
And so it's working. I mean, Jordan Peterson's selling 5,000 books a day or a week. Sorry,
no, he's selling about 20,000. He's selling about 20 to 25,000 books a week. Jordan Peterson.
A week. Okay.
A week.
5,000 a weekday. Yeah, that's what it was. And yet not in the New York Times bestsellers, because the way that they got around putting Jordan Peterson in the Times bestsellers is he's Canadian, and technically they don't have to put international authors on that list. Although they always put Margaret Atwood in there, of course.
Well, yeah, but she sells shitty novels, so what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I hope she has to ride a donkey across the Mojave. That's what I
Why don't you tell us how you really feel, Jay?
That's
how you feel. Now, speaking of Davos, I just wanted, there was on the last show there, we played a little bit of a clip from Ezra Levant with Rebel News. And that clip was them rolling up on, I think that was on day 1 or day 2 of Davos, and they were being...
I think it was the day before the kickoff, actually. I think it was on day 0, like the day before the main day, yeah.
Either way, they were pulled over and questioned by security armed thugs, and it was quite interesting, his take. I mean, you heard us last time. We both think Ezra is brilliant. He's a gangster in the world of independent journalists for sure. And there was one scrum that has been scrubbed. And scrum, by scrum, I mean a reporter scrum, where they have a bunch of reporters following around a certain person trying to get them to answer questions. And so there's one scrum that has been scrubbed from YouTube and from Facebook and from various media outlets. I have it here. I want to roll the first part of it, Jay, here to start, just to get your, I'm not sure. So this might be the second part or the first part. I think this is the first part. Okay, let's try this one here, guys. So this is Ezra Levant following around. Well, you'll see who he's following around, but I'll give you a hint. He is the president of Pfizer. Just a hint. All right, here we go.
Mr. Bourla, can I ask you, when did you know that the vaccines didn't stop transmission? How long did you know that without saying it publicly?
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. Answer that question. I mean, we now know that the vaccines didn't stop transmission, but why did you keep it secret? You said it was 100% effective, then 90%, then 80%, then 70%. But we now know that the vaccines do not stop transmission. Why did you keep that secret?
Have a nice day.
I won't have a nice day until I know the answer. Why did you keep it a secret that your vaccine did not stop transmission?
Is it time to apologise to the world, sir? To give refunds back to the countries that poured all their money into your vaccine that doesn't work, your ineffective vaccine? Yeah, you have a little bit around. Are you not ashamed of what you've done in the last couple of years?
Do you have any apologies to the public, sir?
Are you proud of it? You've made millions on the backs of people's entire livelihoods. How does that feel to walk the streets as a millionaire on the backs of the regular person at home in Australia, in England, in Canada?
What do you think about on your yacht, sir? What do you think about on your private jet? Are you worried about product liability? Are you worried about myocarditis?
What about the sudden deaths?
What do you have to say about young men dropping dead of heart attacks every day? Why won't you answer these basic questions? No apologies, sir.
Do you think you should be charged criminally for some of the criminal behaviour you've obviously been a part of?
How much money have you personally made off the vaccine?
How many boosters do you think it'll take for you to be happy enough with your earnings? Nothing?
Who did you meet with here in secret? Will you disclose who you met with? Who did you pay commissions to? In the past, Pfizer has paid $2.3 billion in fines for deceptive marketing. Have you engaged in that same conduct again? Are you under investigation like you were before for your deceptive marketing, sir?
If any other product in the world doesn't work as promised, you get a refund. Should you not refund to countries that laid out billions for your ineffective vaccine?
Are you used to only sympathetic media, so you don't know how to answer any questions?
Is that it?
The timing on that was a little bit funny. So that's the clip, the first half of the clip of the Rebel News folks chasing Albert Borland around, president of and CEO, I believe, of Pfizer. Jay, is he not? At least president.
Yeah, he's the CEO. The lady who's famously who finally spilled the beans in the European Union when questioned by Rob. I can't remember his last name now.
The Dutch fellow there.
Yeah. That's the COO. That lady.
Okay.
So yeah, they have that typical COO, CEO, and CFO type of situation going on over there. So that's really great. Those are all exactly the correct questions, and yeah, we all should be aware of how much, how little these people are punished for these things, and that's mostly anti-tort law. Everybody thinks that anti-tort law was come in to prevent lawyers from making a mockery of things. It's not true. Anti-tort law was put in place so that they could just continually punish pharmaceutical companies in a way that didn't cripple those pharmaceutical companies or actually make them suffer really in any way. And so that's the main issue with this, is that they're not punished harshly enough. They don't care about cutting $120 million check when they've just made $160 million on making people sick. They really don't care, and it's not enough. And it's just like Facebook. Facebook still has the biggest fine in history, and that was for their for what they did with people's privacy. And they just shrugged it off, and it was not even a quarter of their earnings for that quarter, and it just wasn't enough. And so these penalties need to get harsher. The actual people responsible the corporate structure. And I know, because in setting up the guild here, we're setting this up as a cooperative, and even in a cooperative, there is way too much shelter from liability. We need to change the corporate structure so that when people do actual criminal things, they're not hidden behind this wall of liability where they can just cut a check and get away with it. Put them in fucking jail. Let them sit in the pokey for a few months. Let's do that. Let's actually do something, and then maybe that'll actually change the way that these things are conducted and what these people get away with. And secondly, not to run on, but they will be. There is an investigation. Ezra's right. There is an investigation already, and that's a Florida grand jury, and that's a big dollar sign. Florida's, the third most populous state. I'm sure they spent many billions on vaccines and boosters, and they're part of this grand jury is to get all that money back and a punitive damages for the damage that it did to children, especially. And also Barnes from Viva Barnes on Locals, Rumble, and YouTube. Barnes has 3 cases in 3 separate states, all along the lines of suing Pfizer for the damage that was done to children. And that's all great. And there's going to be way more. And Christine Anderson's working on it on the other side of the puddle too. And we know that junkyard dog's going to get something.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, she's a gangster, and it's good to see that there are some legal proceedings starting to take place. These things take time, the wheels of justice turn slow. So we're not talking about something that's going to happen overnight, and there's not going to be some dramatic change where all of a sudden, Albert Bourla and these various politicians all get arrested. But there will be change, and there will be change, and there will be a reckoning of sorts where people are held to account and held to task for having done what they did and having taken the payoffs they took. And
Yeah.
we saw earlier this week, we saw Horseface quit. She said she was burnt out. Horseface being the former New Zealand prime minister, who,
Mhm.
New Zealand, for those of you who may or may not know, have had some of the most totalitarian lockdown measures of anywhere on the planet. It was absurd there. Second, probably only to China, in my opinion, and then next on the list would be Australia, and then us. And
Yeah.
that's not any list we want to be near the top on. That's for sure.
Yeah, we were pretty much right on par with France's vaccine protocol, which was but way more so than Britain. I mean, in Britain, it's been a while already that they've been saying no, you can't give this to young men under the age of 29. They got on that pretty quick, and in some places, but yeah, some countries obviously. And you know what? That New Zealand prime minister was also the lady who was having atmospheric scientists putting cows in tents to measure what their flatulence output is, so that they can monitor farming to the nth degree, so that they can start eliminating cows, because they can now put a carbon factor to a cow and say this cow equals minus 385 carbon or whatever the fuck stupid thing like that. Like it's just asinine.
And you guys want to know a little secret? Also, future young global leader, former future young global leader of the WEF. So go figure, they're all in lockstep. They're all telling you the same story. They're all going the same agenda and the same propaganda. One would think that you out there, our listeners and our viewers, are smart enough to look at that and go, if they're all telling me the same story, just like in media where they're all telling you the same story, there's probably another side to it that they're not telling me. And I hope that we're all wise enough out there to get that and to understand that. Because, I mean, they're all doing the same thing, and yet somehow are saying the same thing, and yet somehow nobody's stepping up to go, why aren't we looking at another side of this? And I think that's an important point. There is other sides of the story. We saw, interestingly enough, we saw some things go down with Larry Fink to do with the WEF, and I think that they wanted BlackRock to boot Tesla from their stocks.
Well, they did. They did. Yeah.
They did. And I don't think Larry Fink was too happy about that. Maybe that's the reason. But either way, Larry Fink. So BlackRock owns just about everything. Everything you see, eat, hear, buy, pretty much BlackRock has their hands in it. And they seem to be pulling away from the WEF, from the World Economic Forum. So that could be a good sign as well. That could be the start of a change, a shift. And this could be, the point where we pick our line, or our line to dig in on, and to build our trench, and to stick it out, and say this is the line. We're going to stop right here and push back and fight back. And I think, Jay, you had some thoughts on that earlier. We spoke earlier about that. What were you saying about that earlier?
Well, I mean, the main thing is, like you say, BlackRock is kind of, the relationship between the WEF and BlackRock is tenuous, and so this is the time, and this is why why I created the which hasn't quite launched yet. We're still kind of ironing out the details, but we've got a really good boycott the WEF program on our Actions app, and I'm gonna make sure that on Tuesday we'll be adding the link to that in the description of Tuesday's podcast. But basically, if we continue to help BlackRock make that decision by trying to boycott their companies and continue for them to have loss in those companies, then we're pushing the ESG agenda slowly out as we do that, and that's what we can do. We have teeth, we have the ability to move the ball in certain areas. We have buying power. Florida, Texas, Western Canada, we have buying power. And we can make a difference with that. And we need to help Larry Fink make the correct decision there and bail on this. I mean, I'm not saying he's an altruistic guy. What I'm saying is that years ago, the WEF said, this is the future. This is where we're going. Get on board or you're going to have regulatory problems. He said, okay. And now he's starting to lose incredible amounts of money on it. And he's starting to say, no, this really isn't going to work out. There's crypto investment funds that are doing more business a day than we are at this point. And, which is the tale of last week. The NASDAQ got its ass kicked and crypto did really well, despite the fact that another company went bankrupt. So, I mean, we're seeing that, and that's what the main, for those that don't know, the main goal of crypto is to bank the unbanked. That was the main purpose, is that there's 3 billion people on this earth who are not banked at present. Like, not just they're at risk of having their banks taken away, they don't have any access to banking. And so we can change that, and we can offer an escape hatch for people like Jeremy, because you can get your crypto.com credit card and you can use that like a debit card, and you use your crypto holdings and you just get paid in crypto. I mean, there's cities that are paying their employees in Bitcoin. Florida, New York, right? Florida and New York, like that's what are we? That's like 80 million people. It's like there's a way around, and we need to start accessing that, because now's the time. We have, like I was saying earlier, we have these media. This conservative media is just exploding. All of the crappy social medias are losing right now. YouTube is getting their ass kicked. Facebook's getting their ass kicked. You know who's doing really well? Rumble, Blaze, Daily Wire. That's who's and Twitter now. Now that they've gotten rid of all the neoliberal bullshit and 80 staff worth of excess fat that needed to be trimmed anyway, and things like that. So, use your buying power. Look it up. Find out what BlackRock supports and start boycotting it. We're going to have a list for you so you can do that. We're going to have a way for you to petition that. Go to your local politician, tell them you don't want BlackRock.
And the first company in the list of companies we want you to blacklist and to boycott is Scotiabank, because they have debanked a friend of ours, and that is Jeremy Mackenzie. If you want to support Jeremy Mackenzie, you can go to GiveSendGo/Jeremy Mackenzie. I'll leave that link in the description for the people that are going to watch this back. It's not there right now, but it will be. And that will help him with his legal battles and various things. So this fellow has to find a way to pay for his mortgage with no bank account. So it's a bit of a battle, but either way, if you can support him, you should. Jeremy Mackenzie on GiveSendGo.
Here's another thing you can do. Send an email to the Daily Wire and tell them that if Crowder doesn't want the 50 million, there's a guy north of the border who's ready to work with the Daily Wire. I'm sure he would.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say what Jeremy's stance would be on that, but certainly he would be great. Yeah, a great addition to the Daily Wire team. We could have the Daily Wire North team, if you will. And
it's not that he does anything that Jordan Peterson and Candace Owens aren't already doing, right?
No, I suppose, but I think he has a more direct way of going at it. I think he has also a less polished and politically correct way of going about it. And I say politically correct into what's palatable for the soft people in our society as of late that need safe spaces and corners to cry, sit and cut in a corner and cry. So we don't have really a way or a need for that in society, in my opinion. Just a thought.
Can I, before we move on, I'm just going to roll another clip here, and we'll deal with that and get that out of the. Oops, I think I hit the wrong one. Okay, there we go.
All right, here we go.
Is it not wanting to go?
No, I got nothing here. Which clip do you want to draw?
Here this week, Elon fired a shot across the bow, asking if everyone would prefer the WEF control the world The answer was pretty close to unanimous, 86% saying no, 14% of people, which are ridiculous neoliberal trolls, said yes. Elon also tweeted out, WEF is increasingly becoming an unelected world government that the people never asked for and the people don't want. And not to brag or anything, but I've been covering this for a little while now, this Sri Lanka crisis, where Sri Lanka was bankrupted last year. They're all starving as a result of the climate initiatives that they were pressured into, which wiped out their agricultural industry, which is their main industry. Now there's lots of people starving. The country has been bankrupt since August. It's discussing its recovery with the IMF. This is the result of the climate initiative. And finally, somebody's also is blowing that trumpet. I'm glad to see somebody in the one of the big culture warriors on the conservative side of things finally go after this, and Tucker Carlson. So we'll take a look at that.
And this is our new favorite. The so-called World Economic Forum seems to exist to destroy national economies. Not an overstatement. It was the WEF, keep in mind, that told the government of Sri Lanka to give up modern fertilizer. Oh, good plan, guys. Go ahead and try it. Result? The country collapsed and people starved. And of course, it was the WEF that predicted the COVID lockdowns would, quote, quietly improve cities, not turn them into ominous hellscapes of unemployment, drug addiction, and crime. It seemed like a good plan at the time. Hey, I've got an idea. Let's prevent people from working. That'll make them rich. It'll quietly improve life for everyone. That's the World Economic Forum for you.
Isn't that cute? You know, that's a group of people that are, you know, a sinister group of elitists that are, you know, psychopaths. They're motivated by a Marxist ideology, and they want to control everything and everyone on the planet. And it's all under the guise of what's for your own good or for the good of the planet. And it's in fact not that at all, just like it never was in any other communism setup ever, you know, on the planet. It was never for the good of the populace. It was only for the good of a select few. And they call that their style of capitalism is called stakeholder capitalism, where there are a select group of stakeholders that will own all the things and we'll own nothing, because they are the all-knowing wise ones that should hold all the resources and all the money and all the power, and we don't we don't know anything, and we shouldn't own anything. Because we're just not capable of having that. We're not capable of being trusted with the ownership of a thing, or having a free thought, or a free, you know, minute to do anything but say good things about the government, which I don't think there's anybody in history that's ever had only good things to say about their government, about their current situation. And that's what we're looking towards, is they don't want to have that kind of speech be online, and they'll control that. And we're seeing bills being put in our country in place to control some of that in other countries. And it's all part and parcel to this whole WEF agenda, which is the complete control of all sources of information, all sources of food, all sources of resources, all sources of anything, pretty much, on the planet.
Yeah, all of it. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, the brilliant thing about that video too, that's kind of like a bittersweet symphony, in that the Sri Lanka disaster went unmitigated and they're getting away with it. On the other hand, once I saw that from Elon, and I thought, okay, second richest man in the world. I know who the richest man in the world is when Elon isn't, and he's a mining tycoon. And the one after Elon is an oil tycoon. Now, they're all ahead of the WEF, and I look at I like to look at motive when I look at things like that sick person. What's their motive? Well, the WEF's problem is they can't win in the businesses that they're in, and so they just want to get rid of the industries that they can't dominate, right? And what is that? Rockets, you know, the stars essentially, mining,
Oil,
and oil.
oil.
We need those things. You know, we need those things.
We need those things, and they can't dominate those things because the people that are dominant in those sectors are too powerful. They don't have the push that they do with people in other sectors, including food and
Yeah, it's too many jobs that they're trying to wipe out. Essentially, like that's too many people to put out of work.
And people with that, people often with that much money have a lot of power, and people with that much power aren't easily bought. And I think that's the thing to keep in mind, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
these oil tycoons probably look at somebody in the WEF and go, "I got probably more money than you and any of your other, family does." So they're not too
Yeah.
worried about the threat of or the lure of economic prosperity when they've got their own prosperity.
And I mean, and there's the good example that backs up that statement, Scott, for sure, is the fact that I can pull about 5 company names out of a hat, and every single one of them, let alone the 5 of them collectively, have done more in green initiative than the WEF has. And one of them is Exxon. Exxon has done more climate mitigation and climate initiative and more actual technology research into alternate energy than anybody, and yet they're getting gutted, or the WEF would like to try to gut them, but they can't.
There's
And
a
so
lot
they're
of these,
asking
there's a lot
governments
of
to do
these
it.
companies. Suncor is another good example. There's a lot of
Yep,
these
yep.
companies that are energy sector companies that have taken the lead in developing other parts of their business that don't necessarily just revolve around petroleum-based chemicals and products. And
That's right.
one of those companies is based here in BC. I don't know who the
Mhm.
funder is, but they're a carbon capture-based technology company. And so what they do is they capture carbon out of the air and turn it into a fuel that is um, completely clean burning as hydrogen, and it can be put right in your car, right in your diesel truck, right in the train engine, right in the transport truck, and it burns completely clean. So
And that's a Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban is the lead and the biggest investor in that.
well, there you go. So I mean, there is a lot of investment in those sectors, and I think that it's not necessarily a petroleum based company, but there's a lot of these energy companies that are developing greener technologies and alternative energy sources because they are as much on board with varied forms of energies and supplying various forms of energies as anybody is. Um, I don't know whether there's any actual statistics that are actually fully vetted as to whether or not there is an untappable oil market or oil resource on the planet or is not. But what we've always been taught is that it will run out eventually. I've heard some people say and some claims say that it will never run out because it's a renewable. No, it will never run out.
It,
So
right now, there's oil making itself under your feet. No matter where you are, there's down beneath you. If you go far enough, there's oil being created right now.
fair enough. So there you have it.
It's perpetual.
So it's not an unrenewable resource. It renews itself. But one of the things that aren't renewable on the planet right now is knowledge, and one of the things that aren't renewable on the planet right now is human life, and we are slowly heading towards a point where we're disregarding a significant loss of human life that has to do with directly with a medical intervention that was put upon us because we all feared a thing we didn't know anything about. And so that's what I mean by about the thing we should fear most is the lack of knowledge and that's what's going to end us. We were all afraid of something that was just a pretty nasty flu virus. To the point where many businesses went out of business. There was many family members that alienated other family members. Some of us had our rights violated for a couple of years. And for any of you people that are going to jump in here and say, what rights did you lose? The rights to fucking travel freely in my own country, for one, among others.
Yeah,
and those are inalienable rights here in Canada, but that's just one. And it's written right there in the Canadian Constitution, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So
coercion is not allowed either.
Yep.
Like it doesn't have to be that somebody comes and puts a gun to your head. Coercion is still duress in the eyes of the Canadian Supreme Court.
Exactly. So what Jay's alluding to there is exactly that. If somebody comes up to you and says, you got to take this job, well, you don't have to, but if you don't, you just can't go to restaurants because we want everybody else to be safe. And so, let alone we're going to disregard that there's no logic to that statement whatsoever because it's painfully lacking logic. But let's just move forward to the point where they said you can't do this unless you do this. That is coercion. It may not be by threat, and it may not be, well, if you don't take this job, we're gonna, pardon me, we're gonna take your kids away, or we're gonna take all your funds, or close your bank accounts. It was more like, "Hey, you don't have to take it, but if you don't, we're gonna make like life uncomfortable. We're gonna make life a pain in the ass for you." And
Yeah.
they did everything they could to do that, and that is coercion. That is by
Yeah.
definition coercion. It doesn't have to be by threat of
Mhm.
violence. It doesn't have to be by threat of losing some of your property. Just simply by changing something or by making life uncomfortable for you, that is a
Mm.
form of coercion. At least
Well,
in order
and
in this
sorry.
case. No, just in this
Sorry.
case, it's coercion if they're trying to make life uncomfortable for you or trying to make it so that you
Yeah.
can't function in society or you have more difficulty functioning in society, it's still coercion if they're trying to
Yeah.
get you to
Well,
comply with what they want, right?
to put that in a nutshell, in the Western world, in the legal system in the Western world, it's pretty much unilateral across the board. Most constitutions in the Western world are very much the same because they're all based on the Magna Carta. And basically, if you want a nutshell of what they think about the whole coercion thing, as the legal system sees it, you do not use the carrot and the stick on human beings. That's for horses. You don't use it on human beings. You don't say, you'll do this and we'll reward you with this, and if you don't, we'll hit you with this. That is not to be done to human beings. That's what our legal system at the highest resolution, that's essentially what it's saying when it relates to citizens being under coercion. So, in case you've ever wanted to boil that down to something a little more understandable, and so that's the bones of that. That's where that all stems from. So, all the legal arguments, basically, for the government wanting to do coercion, they're all going to have to be backed on the principle of we should give people the carrot and the stick. That's what they have to prove to Supreme Court justices, and they've won a few battles, but by and large. Not so much. For instance, one that people don't even know about. Speaking of the WEF, the Supreme Court ruled in 2019 in the United States that the WEF that nobody could any longer call CO2 pollution. And you may have noticed that the wording's changed a little bit, and that's because they said you have to stop calling CO2 pollution. We can't tell children that plants eat CO2, but that CO2 is pollution. We can't do that. We have to make a discrepancy. And they're right. They really are fucking right about that.
Well, I mean, we're all carbon-based life forms, right? So
there would be nothing on this planet without carbon.
There would be nothing on this planet without carbon, and if carbon ceased to exist on the planet, so would you. Just keep that in mind. If you want to get rid of all forms of carbon and you believe in all this bullshit, then just keep in mind that you're the biggest polluter. You're the one they want to get rid of, not your car. You're the one that takes up the space. You're the one that's eating the food. You're the one that's producing these quote unquote emissions, and you're the one that's sucking up the resources too. All the riches, the diamonds, the different things that they want. They only need 500 million of us to keep their planet running, and that's what they're shooting for. They want to reduce the amount of population, and we are the pollutants on the planet. We are the
they see us as a pest. They see us the way that you see aphids in your garden.
I see them often, and I see them usually met with an army of ladybugs because they destroy aphids and are quite good at it. And they don't produce any chemicals, and they're cute as hell. I love ladybugs for some reason.
But did you guys get that Asian variety creeping in this last year? We had like an Asian ladybug that eats anything. It'll eat meat. It'll eat leaf off of plants and everything. It looks very similar to a ladybug, but they're a total pest.
I'm not sure. We released thousands and thousands of ladybugs around here. I can't remember how many, but we released a lot. So
yeah, I've got mine ordered for this spring too.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. On another matter, or another subject matter for us around here is oftentimes producing food in ethical, sustainable ways. So what does that tell you, WEF? We're not all trying to pollute the planet and kill people. We're not all trying to get them to eat bugs either. We're not suggesting you eat ladybugs. We're simply saying ladybugs take care of the things that are trying to eat the food we want to feed you, like lettuce or tomatoes or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
What I
they're
mean,
really good at that.
I spent probably 400 hours last year on my personal horticultural experiment, which is to generate as much food as I can per square foot in my garden. And literally, what I put in my garden is entirely dependent upon its efficiency in that manner and the way that I grow it and everything. It's basically, I'm trying to show people that the end result is to show people how to produce enough food with 200 square feet, not just for their family, but for their family and their two neighbors. And then all three of those people don't have to go to a fucking store and get all this stuff. And number one, we cut down on the diesel fumes by doing that. You know, whether or not they're damaging, that will remove a bunch of them. It'll increase the quality of life because people won't be eating pesticides and herbicides and all this crap. Number three, it'll put money right back into people's bank account, and that's what I'm working on. So yeah, I'm not a denier that we could do things better than we can. I'm a denier in let's kill 5 million people in the next 5 years so that possibly we save 12 million 100 years from now. We'll kill these ones to save the hypothetical ones, which kind of mirrors the COVID thing too. That's fine. A bunch of young people will get fucked up, but the elderly will live another 5 years. There's no math where that works.
Yeah, you and I spoke about that earlier this week, Jay. And I stand by what I said then, which was it makes no sense for society as it is right now to arguably ruin the lives or severely traumatize the lives of many young people, set them back educationally, and set them back on a social scale, like tremendously. What the effects of that, what the long-term effects of that are yet as of yet unknown, but I'm sure we'll see them unfold. We already see some of the things going on where people can't stop wearing masks now because they don't feel safe not wearing them, even though there's nothing to worry about. And that is just some of the psychological a psychological effect. But what is the long-term effect of all these things that they've done? And what will this do to to the future? So the point is we tried as much as we could to protect those that were likely near end of life anyway, over 75 and under 85. The average age life expectancy in Canada, I think, is 80. The average age of death of COVID, when they were reported to have died from COVID, which nobody really knows if they did or not, was 82. So
yeah, north of 80. Yeah.
So you got to figure that it really wasn't something we needed to worry about, and yet they shut the entirety of society pretty much down because of it. And that is something we all should reflect on. And moving forward into the next thing, we should try and remember that fear is their tool, right?
Yeah.
Fear is what they want to have over you so they can throw you that lifeline or that buoy when you're drowning, like I spoke of last time, so that you have no choice but to grab that. And when they keep doing that over and over again, then they look like the hero. Then you always go to them for your ideas. You always go to them, for your support. You always go to them for your resources, and you just become sort of incapable of your own independent thought and your own independent living and your own ability to survive should, say, things go for a shit. Let's say right now there's a major cyber attack and everything is shut down and you can't go and buy fuel. You can't start your car. You can't go to the grocery store. Your bank account is not working. If that happened, do you think you could survive? I'm willing to bet that 95% of you, even if you're saying you couldn't.
No.
But that is something you should be concerned about because they tried with a virus that didn't work. I suspect that since they've already announced it, Klaus Schwab, that the next threat is a comprehensive cyber attack. I suspect that that'll be the next thing they throw at us. So this is me starting a bit of a subject matter for the next following few podcasts. I'm going to touch a little bit on some more prepping stuff. Jay is going to talk a little bit about more how you people with homes and with gardens that are small can grow your own food on your own and be more sustainable and more self-reliant that way.
And with a very, very low investment, no barrier to entry.
Exactly. I mean, it's your imagination is kind of going to be important there because you can turn just about anything into what you want it to if you use a bit of a know-how and a bit of imagination and some YouTube videos. And best get on doing some of this stuff now before there is a comprehensive cyber attack, and then you can't take advantage of any of this knowledge and you don't know how to do it. So do yourselves
And
a
put some
favor
extra money in your bank account. You know, save yourself a few bucks. Eat great all summer without spending huge amounts of money on fucking bell peppers. Right, Scott? Uh-oh. Did I freeze? Or did you freeze? I'm not sure if that's sorry everybody, I'm not sure if that's Scott or me that's frozen. It looks like it was Scott got bounced. Okay, I wonder what happened there.
I
Oh, there
was
you are.
actually still in there. I don't know. That's weird.
Oh, you were too, because all I could see on my end was my window.
No, it looks
I
like
could only see that I was on. It was weird. Yeah.
Interesting.
Weird. So yeah, I mean
was,
that's the thing. It's there's so many huge benefits to it. You know, financially, peace of mind. You really don't know how rewarding it is to come home at night or get up in the morning and look out and see how much taller everything is. That's an amazing feeling. If you've never felt it, you got to get some of that. Houseplants, not the same thing. Just not.
No, for sure. I mean, houseplants don't cut it as far as that stuff goes. You can't take satisfaction in it when it's not producing food for you.
Yeah. Or growing fast. It just, oh, look, it grew fucking several millimeters in the last goddamn 60 days. Like, it's boring. My house plants are, some of them are celery. I have celery because it just grows like crazy in the house. It's awesome. Green. So yeah, like that is there's a huge and a lot of benefit to that. That people, you know, don't even realize. Give it a shot, give it a try. Start doing prepping things, you know. Stop flying all over the world for vacation, and maybe just think about taking a trip and going camping, and figure out what kind of gear you can get by with, and how you can you know, feed yourself and make do without the grid. Challenge yourself to do that a couple of times a year, and you're going to find that you feel better. You're going to feel a little bit better about your situation. I think.
Well, for sure. There's nothing like going out in my life. What I love is being able to go to the base of a mountain, just grab my backpack and whatever I'll need and hike up the mountain and stay there for whatever duration of time. Maybe it's a weekend, maybe it's a week, who knows, and then come back down knowing that, you know, I have to survive. And so what happens in my experience, what happens is that things get simpler. Like, you really only have to worry about your shelter, your source of heat, and your food. Especially where I go, I tend not to have any cell phone service. So you're really not worried about anything else in the world other than those things. And when you simplify your life and simplify your daily goings on that way, it's almost like it resets your clock in a sense that, like, you realize that you're going to be okay no matter what. If you can do that, then even if you don't have the technology, even if you don't have contact with a grocery store or something else, you can still hunt, you can still fish, you can still trap, you can still forage, you can still do all these things. And that almost gives you a sense of peace in your life. At least, again, in my experience, that tends to be what it offers. And it's for me, I'm confident in that, but it's always good to have a reminder too, where I can go out to the bush and spend a few days out there and then come back and go, yeah, it feels good to be reminded that I can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of like that.
And for, I mean, and then what happens is, you get less and less of an adventure feeling, because now you figured out how to do it all fairly simply, and now you got to push it a little bit, right? And you got to go, well, how far down this rabbit hole can I go? And so, like, for me now, I'm to the point where I have a mountaineering pack sitting in the garage right now that has 42,000 calories in it at all times, so that if I ever want to just go and have a hike and stay there for a couple of days, I have food for a week and a half there. You know, I could get lost backcountry, I could get snowed in, rain, what, it doesn't matter. And but in doing so, I'm also ready for anything. Like, if, you know, Red Dawn situation, if somebody just suddenly invaded tomorrow, I got my bug out bag. I'm going to make it. I'm going to survive. And I'll stay up there in the woods until the smoke clears and see what's going on. And those are the types of things you'll start getting into. And it feels so adventurous to come up with things. I've invented all kinds of little things for camping that are, you know, stainless. I mean, I have a welder, so it's fairly simple. I have a stainless steel welder. So, I mean, I can make all kinds of cool stuff with stainless. But, you know, the ingenuity of it is really the funnest part. And the same with gardening. I get into hydroponics because just planting stuff in the ground is no longer all that interesting. I need something there to be a little bit more.
Yep, something more interesting, something to keep you more involved. And just you know, sort of a bit of a disclaimer, if you will. We're not trying to create an alarm, any sort of sense of an alarm here, like there's an impending doom. But
No.
none of these skills that you would learn by doing any of these things that we're talking about will ever do you poorly. You'll never go bad or go the wrong way with having skills like this, because, like I said, if things do go for a shit, you'll still be able to survive. You'll still be able to, let's say you're out on a hiking trip and you get lost and you're a couple of days, having the ability to know how to forage, to find yourself a reliable, you know, little bit of shelter, to do different things, to start a fire, etc. These will probably come in handy in times like that. And ultimately, being more self-sufficient, like I said earlier, and being more able to rely on yourself in any situation will make you feel better, more confident, and more at peace with the world around you. And I think that's something that everybody would want to walk around with, feel better, and feel
Yeah.
more confident that if, you know, if there is a massive EMP burst from the solar system, or from the sun rather, and all electronics cease to exist, you'll still be okay if you know how to grow your own food, and you know how to start a fire, and you know how to be a little bit industrious and a little bit creative.
Another thing you can do is, if you're looking to both increase the productivity, the effectiveness, the joy in your life, maybe add a few extra bucks to the bank account, but also be prepared for anything. A 3D printer doesn't really use a lot of power. You can run a 3D printer off of a solar grid. You can run a 3D printer off of a small tributary power generating system. And then, you know, you look at a situation where you can no longer get things manufactured. Well, you can make those things now with your 3D printer that before you would have had to order and had trucked from the other side of the world. Well, now you just jump online, you find a or you start saving the items in your catalog, and you find that item, or you build it, and then you print it, and you've got it. I'm looking at custom made leads and injectors for my hydroponics system, and I can simply draw that and go to my buddy Hans, who has a 3D printer, and he can 3D print like 30 of them for me, and then I've got them all, and I've spent, like, you know, maybe $100, and these are lifetime, you know, way more than I'm going to need in my lifetime item, and then it's done and good, and I don't have to worry about it. And so those are the types of things you could do as well. That's another thing. And, you know, maybe we can look at that in the future as a topic if people want to really get into the productive end of things. I'm doing 5 different hydroponics systems this year, and I'm more than happy to share that with everybody. And so we'll try that out this week. I've got a little clip at the end of the video today, little clip to show you the project I'm working on right now. But I'm more than happy to do a weekly update on what I'm working on, where my seedlings are, what I'm doing to soil condition. I'm going to do some vermicompost this year. And these are all things that will, if you are realistic about things, we still have a lot of fight. The WEF hasn't won. I don't even think they're winning. But if you want to be prepared for any contingency, including like a meteor impact or something, start figuring out how to get yourself a little less reliant on the grid, and the benefits will be endless. And you'll have all kinds of cool stories and stuff to talk about instead of just talking about stuff that you saw online.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Get back to putting your hands in dirt. Get back to living life how it should actually be lived. And I think, folks, on that note, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Jay has one last video to roll. Moving forward from here, I think we're going to do a little segment because I'm going to want to talk about some of the animal husbandry and some of the stuff, the technical ends of the tractors and preparing fields and stuff. That's more my cup of tea. Although I have done a lot of the kind of smaller scale stuff because I've had to. I have the luxury of having a chunk of land to play on, so I don't have to be sort of conformed into one little space. I have a lot of space, but so it'll give edges or give indications and information on both senses and in both ways. So you can do the small scale and the small footprint, and you can also take away some of the soil ideas and some of the different ideas. And for those of you that have a backyard or that live in an area where you can have a couple of chickens, I have raised chickens for eggs professionally in production, so I'm quite well educated in that area, and I'd love to help anybody who, even if you can just have a couple of hens, I might be able to give you a couple of pointers. Maybe you have questions. Why aren't they doing this? Why are they doing this? I probably know the answer, and if not, I'll probably be able to find out for you. So Jay, do you want to sign us off and then lead us out with your video?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's that'll wrap it up for us today, folks. That's the Sunday episode in the bank. Make sure that you give us a like, give us a follow, give us a share, and do that to anybody. Anything that you see that's cool, grow a pair. Start sharing that stuff out. It's great that you like it. It's great that you follow it. But hit that share button and share it with people. Don't automatically prejudge people and think they're gonna be judgmental of you because you're watching something that makes you think a little bit. Share it out. Let the world see it. Get some air under its wings. The algorithm is not on our side and not working for us. So we have to get around that algorithm, and the way we do that is by being loyal communities. When somebody says, hey, check out this thing, actually go and check it out, because they're putting themselves out there by saying that to you. It's probably something pretty cool. And then if you enjoy that, then pass that on, daisy chain it, keep it rolling. And we should all be doing stuff like that. That's how we're going to beat YouTube and all these other platforms. With the small platform approach and the independent journalism. Get out there, follow these things, share them, stop scrolling endlessly, start getting the real information and making sure that everybody has access to it, so we can all do a little less scrolling, a little more learning, and free up a little bit of our time, because time is the real currency of the universe.
Time is the only non-renewable resource in your life. Just remember that, folks.
Okay, so we'll just roll this as an outro. Again, I'm Jay the Mad Hatter. That is Scott.
Cheers.
Of the Clan Campbell. And we will talk to you on Tuesday. Be good to each other.